Hey y'all, it's Desiree and I'm back with another video, and for this video God is saying to show them grace. God is truly calling his children to show grace to those around us. I think that sometimes when we think about showing love and showing grace, being kind to others, we associate it concerning only those who we feel deserve it in a way, not realizing that we are not just called to love those who love us. We are not just called to show grace to those who show us grace, to show kindness to those who show us kindness, but we are called to show those things to those who show up in the complete opposite. And I also feel like sometimes we associate acting in kindness with acting in love towards those who are in the church and in the church alone, not realizing that we are supposed to love those who are in the church and those who are outside of the church. We're supposed to love the found, but we're also supposed to love the lost. And unfortunately, a lot of Christians put themselves on a pedestal even amongst those in the church, because sometimes we think our good works and our good efforts has granted us a part of God's heart that nobody else has access to, as if he doesn't love the sinner and the saint all the same, as if he doesn't love the preacher, the prostitute, and the gay man all the same. But God is calling us back to a place of grace. God is calling us back to a place of humbleness. God is calling us back to a place of love. It's time to love again. Not just love those in the church, but love those outside of the church. This world is continuously getting dark, getting ugly. It's to the point just to be out in the stores sometimes, just to be out in public, it can be very grieving. It can be very draining because the spirits of most surrounding us are dead. People don't too much say hi anymore. People don't too much say, how was your day anymore. They bump into you. They don't say anything. They looking crazy, acting crazy, talking crazy. You can offend someone so easily just by simply smiling, just by simply appearing to be happy. You can sometimes see the rage, the anger fester up in certain individuals at the thought of you, at the sight of you being genuinely happy, because so many are walking around with dry bones. So many are walking around completely spiritually dead. And sometimes you can see the enemy in that person that hates the God in you. So many are into various forms of religions, witchcraft, ideologies, beliefs, and those demons, those spirits that they have opened themselves up to will try to come for you, will try to disturb your peace, come for your joy. And the enemy wants you to get combative. The enemy wants you to go back and forth. The enemy wants you to indulge. And your flesh says, oh no, I gotta say something. Oh no, I can't just let you get away with that. But God is saying he's needing you to act out of grace. He's needing you to act out of love. We are not just called to love those who love us. The word says to treat others how you want to be treated, not treat others how you are being treated. Sometimes when the enemy knows that he cannot get you with willful sin, he'll try to come for the position of your heart. Because if the enemy can disturb your peace, if the enemy can cause you to willfully allow strife into your life, allow conflict, allow discord by way of some random person cutting you off and now y'all are getting into it, or your family member calling you with some mess and now y'all are going back and forth, or that co-worker that seems to think that they're the manager and keeps doing everything to get up under your skin, he can then measle his way throughout your entire life. Because if the heart is off, then everything is out of alignment. It's so important at this time that we show grace. It's so important at this time that we show mercy. The enemy will try to make you think that somebody has one up on you. Let me tell you something. When you choose to walk away from conflict, when you choose to walk away from an issue, when you choose to act out of love, when the enemy desperately wants you to act out of hate, act out of anger, you got one up on the enemy. We need to be so rooted in God. We need to be so rooted in his love that we don't become threatened at the presence of conflict, become threatened at the presence of strife. We got to become so rooted in God that we remember that we are always on a mission. We not just Christian when we're sitting in the church. We're not just Christian when we're tuning into a video. We're not just Christian when we're watching a sermon. We're not just Christian when it makes sense. We're not just Christian when it's beneficial to us. We're not just Christian when we're being praised. We're also Christian when we're being rebuked. We're also Christian when we're being persecuted. And we're also Christian in the presence of the enemy. And we are expected to act accordingly. The other day I was coming back from a walk through the neighborhood, and there was this car that was pulling up, and it had two younger women in the car about my age. They were listening to music and stuff, and just having a good time. And as they were driving by, I noticed that the girl had like a 8-9 feet piece of plastic wrapped around like her tire or something, and her car was dragging it. And I don't know much about cars, but in my mind, that just looked dangerous. And in my mind, that looked like if it was my car, I would want somebody to tell me. So when they stopped, I walked up to the car, and the music was still going. It was real loud, and they had the windows up by that time. And I could tell that she saw me as soon as I walked up to the window. Mind you, it was nighttime, but I knew that she was purposely trying to ignore me at the window of her car. And I'm just like, girl, I don't care nothing about that. I'm about to let you know that you got this plastic on your tire. And so she rolls the window down, and she looks at me, and she was just like, what? It was just like, girl, what do you want? You still here at this window? And when she greeted me with that, because I'm not perfect. I am not Little Miss Perfect. My first reaction was to just be like, you know what? You got it. And turn around and mind my business. But I'm like, nah, like, what if she was to leave and I don't know, something happens to her? And I'm looking at her in her eyes, and I don't see somebody who genuinely has ill intent towards me. I just see somebody that's of the world. And once I told her, you have this piece of plastic stuck to your car, and she got out and she seen it, her whole spirit changed, and she was just like, thank you. And I'm saying that to say that I feel like in the Christian church that we try to distance ourselves so far away from sin, so far away from the world, that we forget that there are still people trapped in sin. There are still people lost in the world that need to be saved. And we cannot save them with this attitude that says, oh, I can't stand next to you. You're a sinner. And also, I shared that to say that we have to truly see those who are still in this world as what they are, lost. You cannot expect a lost person to act like they're found. You cannot expect a person who doesn't have God at the core of their heart to act out of love. So when you aren't met with love, it shouldn't be surprising. It shouldn't throw you off, and it shouldn't pull you out of character. We have to stop villainizing sinners. That's up to God. Who are we to truly villainize sin when the word says that we fall short daily? By no means am I saying that we should accept sin. We should welcome sin. But if you think about it, who are we to truly villainize sin when we don't have a heaven or a hell to put nobody in, and we are not even sure of our own seat? If God meets us with grace and meets us with love despite our sin, we should be able to meet others with grace and meet others with love despite theirs. But I want to make sure that I add balance to this, because by no means is God saying to just roll over and just take the brute of the enemy. Christians are nobody's spiritual punching bag. Christ was humble, he was kind, he was gentle, he was meek, but he did not let people play with him. And he did not waste no time getting folks together. But he did it righteously. He did it with purpose, and he did it according to the will of the Father. Being kind, being loving is not permission to allow people to misabuse you. It's not permission to allow people to walk over you. It's not permission to remain in situations, to remain in circumstances, to remain in relationships that you know are not truly serving you and are not pleasing to God. There is times that God may call you to walk away. There's also times that God will call you to speak up. There are times where you are not permitted to respond to the foolishness, respond to the nonsense. And there are times where it's time to get folks together in Jesus' name. Because Christian don't mean weak. Meek does not mean weak. Sometimes people really need to know about themselves. Jesus was telling folks about themselves, not to clap back, but to draw them closer to the Lord, to initiate repentance according to God's will. Sometimes we want to respond. Sometimes we want to clear our name. Sometimes we want to know. I'm not going back and forth with no fool. If you find yourself going back and forth with the fool, now you a fool. Think of it this way. Would you go back and forth with the 5-year-old? Would you go back and forth with the 4-year-old? No, because you know that their understanding is poor. You know that their rationale is poor. You understand that there's no reasoning with a child. There's no reasoning with a fool. Move on God's accord. Move according to His will. Spare of the moment situations can happen so quickly, and if we aren't careful, we can give our full emotion, full attention to foolishness, allowing the enemy access. Keep your mouth closed unless permitted to speak. Keep your mouth closed so that you can keep your peace. Keep your mouth closed so that you can keep your joy. Keep your mouth closed so that the enemy does not have access.